Mean Girl often gets remembered for the jokes and the fun vibe and for basically being a Y2K staple. But the structure underneath it is a closed social system organized under hierarchy, power, and unstable identity. What initially looks like just a normal teenage drama is actually a reflection of a system where belonging is conditional. And once they enter that system, they start instantly adjusting who they are to remain inside of the system. Katie Heron moves from being homeschooled in Africa into an all-American high school where social groups are rigid and highly visible. She is quickly taken in by Janice and Damien, who position themselves outside of the dominant hierarchy, and then she gets pushed into infiltrating the most powerful clique in high school, the Plastics. The Plastics, a group led by Regina George, is a group that sits at the top of the school's social hierarchy. What starts as a plan to observe and destabilize that group turns Caddy into becoming part of it, adopting its rules, and eventually contributing to becoming part of the problem of a system that she had trouble adapting to initially. The film opens by comparing high school to a jungle. And that framing holds true because the aggression in this case operates through relational aggression and indirect aggression. When Janice describes the different cliques like different species in a jungle, she is basically mapping out social categorization of in-group and out-group dynamics. This is funny, yes, but also it's quite brutal, and this brutality comes from how invisible the rules are and how difficult it is as a teenager to navigate this. People follow these rules without really naming them, like it's some kind of secretive system that people don't really map out in an outward manner, but it's there. And at the center of the system, there is an ongoing competition for status, hierarchy, and attention. And external motivation functions as a marker of position. This aligns with social dominance orientation, where individuals organize themselves around hierarchies and compete to maintain or climb within them. Belonging depends on visibility and approval, and both can be withdrawn. Caddy is already primed when she enters it. She comes from a background where she already felt out of place, which connects to growing up in an attachment insecurity environment and a heightened sensitivity to belonging and a heightened desire to belonging as well. And there is a common misconception that sees the Plastics as the villains of the film, but they are not the only villains per se, because the pressure, the peer pressure, starts not with the Plastics, but with Janice herself. She sees Caddy in a very emotionally vulnerable position, and she basically orchestrates this revenge plan, not to avenge Caddy from her own humiliation situation that she went through in the Halloween party, but for her own self-interests. This plan is centered around bringing Regina George down by destabilizing all the elements that keep her in the popularity zone. When Janice frames the plan, you're going to pretend to be friends with them. She introduces Caddy to the system through a false sense of purpose and connection. This is normative social influence operating through belonging. And Caddy agrees to this before she even understands what she's getting herself into. Remember, she grew up in a homeschooling environment, totally away from Western norms and culture. So she really has no idea what she's getting herself into. And then we have the extremely famous lunch table scene that make the rules explicit. The "on Wednesdays we wear pink" seems like a quirky little fun thing, but later on it presents itself as a very strict rule that serves as a primary example of how rigid and how brutal the rules are. you can't sit with us. It informs exclusivity and it establishes boundary regulation. Access to the group is conditional. The love and the care and the sense of unity in the group is conditional. It is not unconditional, and it is not because of somebody's amazing personality. It is because of what they can provide to the group and how they can serve the benefits of the queen bee, Regina George. Regina maintains control by managing perception, information, and relationships, which is quite similar to how cults operate. And Regina's behaviors reflect narcissistic traits that are framed in an adolescent context. And this is important to remember to understand her as a character, because she is a teenager and her personality is still developing. So there is still hope for improvement here. These narcissistic traits are the need for admiration, the interpersonal control, and the sensitivity to status. But underneath that sits insecurity. Her identity depends on controlling the narrative and the people that are inside the narrative as if they were these chess pieces. When she says something like, "Why are you obsessed with me?" she isn't particularly expressing genuine concern about why somebody is giving her so much attention and directing so much attention to her, rather than redirecting the attention and destabilizing the other person by accusing them. This is basically gaslighting used as a social tool. And the way she controls the people around her works like a system of moving pieces. Gretchen, Karen, Caddy, Erin, and the wider high school all function as the part where she positions herself as the queen bee. And when that structure starts to break, her reactions escalate. The loss of control she experiences leads to visible instability because her identity is tied to maintaining the structure. The burn book is Regina George's private notebook filled with insults and rumors about other girls, any girl in high school, especially the non-popular ones. And this reinforces the system through fear. The people that are around her in the plastics group, they are aware of this burn book and they supposedly contribute to the information in the burn book. But this book isn't about having this bonding experience of making up some gossip and laughing about it within your group. It's about installing fear. It creates fear conditioning and exclusivity within the group, and also a warning that you might end up in it if you do not fall in Regina George's good graces. Basically, anyone can become a target. So when the book is leaked by Regina George herself, in order for her to clear her name and sound like a nice person that is innocent, because she inserts herself in the book in order to clear her name, the school turns on itself because nobody understands who told who what and how does actually real information ended up in the book. And this chaos reflects what was already there. The system was unstable, and the book simply reveals that. Secrecy across the story functions as group cohesion mechanisms. The three-way calls, the rules like on Wednesdays we wear pink, these are forms of coded language, and they create this exclusivity almost like a cult-like internal code. They operate in this closed system that reinforces belonging for insiders and reinforces distance from outsiders. And the way that everybody in the school know their place, know who the group is, who belongs in the group, and that they do not belong in the group, is basically social identity theory in action, where group memberships become central to self-definition. Caddy's transformation reveals just how much status can affect someone's empathy, even if they are initially an empathetic person. As she gains attention, her perspective narrows. She becomes completely obsessed with herself. and self-centered. This reflects egocentric bias and self-enhancement bias. It doesn't mean that she's a narcissist. It just means that she's falling into this bias slowly the more attention she receives. When she pretends to be bad at math so she can obtain the attention of Aaron Samuels, who is her romantic interest and Regina George's ex-boyfriend, she adjusts her identity to maintain her position. That behavior reflects adolescent identity diffusion, where the self is still unstable and is shaped completely by external feedback. The Halloween party, one of Caddy's first major social missteps in the plastics, shows how quickly shame can destabilize someone. Caddy arrives in a costume that does not match the unspoken rules. Regina's reaction, Aaron's confusion, they all create an evaluative threat, which trigger an acute shame response. The moment when Caddy leaves exposed, and immediately after, she runs to Janice's house. And in that vulnerable state, she is pulled deeper into that revenge plan, deeper into the system that she didn't even realize really existed. And the timing shows how shame can increase susceptibility to influence, because ultimately somebody is vulnerable, and when somebody is emotionally vulnerable, they are more keen to fall into pressure. And although Janice positions herself as outside of the hierarchy, she operates within the same structure. She might not be the popular girl, but she still does popular girl things like influencing people and knowing that she has power over someone. She specifically recruits Caddy because she is new, socially inexperienced, and easier to influence. Her plan relies on manipulation, humiliation, and positioning. This is instrumental aggression, harm used to achieve a goal that happens to be self-serving, as we later find out in the story. Her motivation is not shaped by jealousy itself, but by ruminating on unresolved resentment. Even if Janice cares about Caddy and has this liking for her, takes this liking for her, she does use Caddy for her own need for resolution of her own problems. And Aaron Samuels is just another pawn in the whole situation, because although he's the man, he does not structure the hierarchy. He functions as a catalyst within it rather than a source of power. The competition around him reflects mate value competition, but the system among the girls exists independently. They are competitive, they are snarky with each other, they are judgmental, they are not girls supporting girls. He is repeatedly manipulated, lied to, repositioned, and used as leverage while he's actually looking for something genuine. And we can see this when he goes to Caddy's bedroom and he's looking at these photos of Caddy in her childhood and just as herself, not as part of the plastics. And that is a really important moment in the story because it really positions Aaron as someone that's just looking for something genuine, just in the wrong places, clearly. His role shows how individuals can be turned into tools within a hierarchy that they do not control. Relational aggression drives the damage in this environment. It operates through exclusion and rumors and humiliation. Even without physical violence per se, the psychological impact remains high enough because it targets identity and belonging. The absence of physical harm doesn't remove the impact. And in some cases in real life, the psychological strain can translate into direct self-harm. And in many cases in adolescence, this type of psychological strain can translate into direct self-harm. Humiliation regulates the system, and when someone violates the expectations, they are exposed and used as an example for everybody else. This reinforces behavior conformity through fear of exclusion. And Very interesting thing about this story is that it also exposes the adults not as heroes at all. It is quite realistic in that aspect too, because adults don't come and fix anything. They fail to contain any of it, actually. Miss Norbury attempts intervention, but the system has already formed its internal logic. The film exposes adults as how most adults really are: human, failing often, and inconsistent, and also often unaware, which allows hierarchies like this among students to operate without interruption. And unlike what many people may think, the emotional engine here is not internalized misogyny. It's sheer competition for status and power combined with developmental insecurity. These behaviors are shaped by adolescent identity formation, attachment patterns, and influences that can include family dynamics and generational patterns. The competition is direct, even when the aggression is indirect. Friendships are mediated by hierarchy, not gender. And yes, it happens more with female friendships, but that is also just the nature of female friendships in general. There is envy and status and competition that interferes with consistency. And relationships shift depending on someone's position within a group. And ultimately, Caddy's trajectory reflects development rather than fixed change. She experiments with a version of herself aligned with status and power, then reaches a point where it no longer fits. The maths competition, which takes place after the social fallout caused by the burn book incident, provide a different form of validation, competence-based, merit-based. When she solves the problem and says the limit does not exist, this moment reconnects her with a more stable identity, with her own identity. And this resolution does not remove hierarchy. It reduces the intensity and it redistributes how status is expressed. The drive for power remains, and this reflects how status-seeking behavior persists across social systems. And the central thread around this is the fragility of adolescent selfhood. Identity is still forming, which makes it highly responsive to external validation, pressure, and hierarchy. Every character adjusts themselves and their behaviors in response to the system that they're in. And I believe that looking at it through this perspective, we can realize that there's also space for judgment and critique, but also sympathy. Because yes, these behaviors cause harm, but they also emerge from a place of developmental instability and insecurity and social pressure. As teenagers, people are still discovering themselves, and unfortunately, bad things really do happen to good people, especially in adolescence, and it can shape someone and also give people a lot of trauma if they are in the receiving end of things like bullying. But looking at it from a distance, it's easier to realize how much context can shape behavior at that stage of life. From a personal position, I related to Caddy pre-plastics and with Janice because she watches how someone can change when they're under pressure and how someone can fade away, basically. And that perspective makes the shift in Caddy even more visible. It also keeps the focus on how easily someone can be pulled into a system without recognizing it at the start. And I believe that the film actually critiques these dynamics by showing how quickly things can escalate and how much in our teenage years it can distort someone's identity power moves through everything here, through admiration, fear, secrecy, and control. And once someone adjusts themselves to maintain their position in a system, rather than embracing themselves and attempting to self-validate, the line between who they are and who they become becomes unstable. So I believe that this film is just a reminder of how much external validation can really mess us up, and how important it is to be ourselves, even if it means being the outcasts and the uncool ones. Yeah, so I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it gave you a different or a deeper perspective into this really huge pop culture film and characters. And I would love to know your opinion, your perspectives, if you have different conclusions of the film, if you have philosophized about it differently, if it made you feel different things. You do not have to agree with me. I'm always welcome for different perspectives. And I will see you on the next one. Bye!